Hi everybody, there are going to be a couple of videos this week. Firstly, because for your first lesson, I'd like to finish up what we were doing last week on holding the government to account. I will then post another video on electoral systems, so that's how we vote. I'm also planning on Monday, if I can find enough things in the house to do it with, to show you an example. So I'm going to try and video me actually showing the different electoral systems. That might sound a bit confusing. Don't worry, I have a plan in my head. I just need to get some things over the weekend to make it happen. Firstly, we're going to finish up the holding the government to account. We've got the same learning intentions as last week. For some of you, this will be pretty straightforward, but I realised maybe I should have made this a little bit clearer. Apologies if so, if you were a bit confused last week, okay? Please remember to let me know if you've got questions. It's quite difficult doing this online. Normally in a classroom, I can look at your faces and understand you've not got a clue or you're totally on board. So it is quite difficult, so do bear with me on that. Again, we've got similar exam questions that might come up or have come up in previous years as well. I'm just going to explain a little bit about the difference between MPs, MSPs, the PM and the FM. Those who did national last year, this should be a refresher, but I need you to start thinking more in depth about it. I need you to start analysing this a bit more. I've got some questions at the end that I've also popped on a sheet for you that should be assigned to you. That'll be all that you need to cover this. I am, however, aware that some people maybe didn't do national or it's been a long time since they've done national, so I'm hoping this will clear up a few bits of confusion. We also did quite a lot last week for our first week of content, and I think a few people are realising just how much higher is going to involve. I'm also a big believer in understanding stuff. I remember being at school, and remembering things is great, but research actually shows the more you understand something and can put it into your own words, the more successful you are at applying that knowledge. So if you can remember everything, that's wonderful. You can remember that fact, that statistic, that's great. However, if you get thrown a question that's got different wording to the one you were practicing writing out 9 times and for the exam, you might not be able to apply it. However, if you understand, so if you properly understand the job of MPs, it shouldn't really matter what question comes up because you get it, it clicks. So my hope is to see if you do truly understand as much as possible. I've got a little video clip there you can watch if you would like. That is actually taken from Friday morning, so the day after Nicola Sturgeon's announcement on the route map out of lockdown. The first couple of minutes, it's just interesting how even she, as a First Minister, leader of our country, believes that holding government to account is important. Okay, little quick recap here or an introduction for those that are new. MPs, that blue box on the left-hand side are your members of Parliament. They are in Westminster. So if you see something saying MP, London, Westminster, but they represent the whole of the UK. There are 650 of them who sit there. They create laws that affect the whole of the UK. There are elections every 5 years. Their main job is to hold the Prime Minister and his cabinet, his government to account. So remember last week we looked at executive. That's where the Prime Minister and his cabinet comes into. They are really important down in the House of Commons, where they sit on the green seats, not the red ones, the green ones. They've got to listen, debate. They might have speeches if there's something they're really passionate about. On the right-hand side in that red box, you've got MSPs. So it's really important not to get muddled up in your answers, because if you write an essay in the exam and you write MPs but mean MSPs, it can be really easy for your examiner to miss a mark because it wasn't clear who you're talking about. MSPs are members of the Scottish Parliament. They make laws for Scotland only. The easiest ones, I hope you remember: health, education, social work, police. Scottish, so MSPs do not make laws for police in England, but they do make laws on how police operate up here. It also means we have a separate legal system. So for anyone considering law as a future career, it's really important that you understand the difference here, because it does mean different laws for us. There are only 129 MSPs. They sit in Holyrood in Edinburgh, okay? Again, they're usually elected every 5 years. We are due to have another Scottish election next year, which means many of you will be able to vote for the first time. Scottish elections age of voting is 16. For UK elections, so for MPs, it's 18, I'm afraid. They have to hold the First Minister to account. They can as well demand, how is she working with Boris Johnson? So most recently, there's been a lot of questions from MSPs to Nicola Sturgeon or the SNP cabinet in Scotland about how are they working with Boris for lockdown? How are they mirroring what's happening down south? Are they going to do the same or different? So that is a lot of scrutiny there. For those that are visual, this is just a little diagram from BBC Bite Size that you can get. The website's linked in the notes, but you can pause this here if you just need help visualising it. We know we've got the Prime Minister in blue there. It's just chance colours. It's not deliberate. Makes laws for all of the UK. Also controls the budget for all of the UK, which does include, through his Chancellor, can you remember his name? Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor who will determine how much money Scotland get to spend on Scottish things. It's a very long process. There's a Barnett formula. If you're interested in that, I can talk to you about it, but you don't need to know the details for hire. But if you're interested in budgeting and how we get our money, we can do some stuff on that. He also leads decisions about our international affairs, Brexit, trade, negotiations, commissions, who we'll partner with and not, leading the G8, so big international kind of organisations that we're a part of. The First Minister is representing Scotland only. She does have her own cabinet that she appoints, for example, an Education Secretary. You've maybe seen or heard a lot of him lately. His name is John Swinney, and his job is to be in charge of education for the whole of Scotland. So he's been looking at how can schools reopen. He looks at nationals hires. Are they effective? Are they good? Things like that. The First Minister can also recommend the top lawyer for the whole of Scotland. Again, if this is your future job aspiration, it's the First Minister who would recommend you to the Queen. The Queen isn't going to say no, but officially has to get rubber stamped. Power is already limited by the UK. However, MSPs will give the First Minister a grilling and look for justification on decisions all the time. We talked a bit about Cabinet as well. One of the things I didn't put in last week, so as not to overwhelm you, was something called collective Cabinet responsibility. This is the assumption that once Cabinet has made a decision, you will not talk down about that. So if you are in Boris Johnson's Cabinet, it is expected that you will only speak positive about any decisions the Cabinet make. Now, how does that work to hold government account? So if you're Dominic Raab, if you're on the Cabinet and you, or Matt Hancock, anyone that's on the UK Cabinet, and you don't agree with what Boris and the Cabinet have passed through, are you allowed to speak out about it? To keep in the good books, the answer is no. However, what we did see last year was a rebellion against the Prime Minister. His original cabinet actually went against him, spoke out negatively against his decisions, and as such, he chucked them out of the cabinet and he hired a new cabinet. So it very much comes down to, are MPs in it for the right reasons? So are they in it because they believe that's the right decision, or are they in it because they want power and they want the top job? I'll let you think about that one. We also know committees are a little bit limited. However, there are a couple of good links here I wanted to share with you. This one, literally, the Independent article you've got there came up this week with MPs trying to force the Prime Minister to not appoint a Conservative as head of one of the main committees. They're backbenchers, so hopefully you remember that term from last week. They sit on the back benches. They're not as important, but they do still get a say. And there's also a little video clip there from the Institute for Government. They are an impartial organisation who are looking to criticise where there are flaws. And they're basically saying accountability is not brilliant at the moment. Here's how we can get better. Overall, what I want you to take away from this section, this study theme, it's more than just putting a question to the Prime Minister at question time. Holding the government to account is what makes the difference between us having a benefit system that works for the people or works for the rich. It's the difference between having people who will answer questions or just think they can please themselves. It's the difference between people having a minimum wage or a living wage or universal income, all these things that we will come on to look at. It's really important that we hold people to account on all sides of government. It doesn't matter whether you agree with SNP, Labour, Conservative, UKIP, Lib Dems, or none at all. It's important that those who are in power have to justify their decisions. Also, think about it. If nobody questioned the government, so whether that's the SNP in Holyrood in Edinburgh, if nobody questioned Nicola Sturgeon, just went, yeah, that's fine, on you go. What's potentially could happen? If nobody questioned Boris Johnson in London, or if it was a Labour government in Keir Starmer, if he got control, if nobody questioned them and you went, yeah, that's fine, do what you like, where would we end up? That's a potentially dangerous situation because there's no accountability. So these are the 5 questions for this lesson I would like you to have a think about. Why are the opposition bothered? Basically, why should the party that is not in control care? Why should they be challenging the government? Why is it important? These are where your analysis marks come in an exam. Not just going, oh, the opposition, the Labour Party, hold the government account by Prime Minister's questions. Why? Do they want to trip him up? Do they want to embarrass him? Do they want to point out flaws? The second one, why should MPs themselves care, whether you're a backbencher or in the cabinet? Who are you accountable to? If you found out your member of parliament had just not voted on anything that actually you're really passionate about, are you going to vote for them in the next election? Would it not just be easier to let the government do what they like? Why or why not? The House of Lords is not elected. Are they useful though? Do you have evidence to say they're doing their job? And do you think Westminster and Holyrood challenge each other? So does Boris and his government challenge Nicola and hers, and vice versa? It's okay if you don't get that last one. That is a challenge question, question 5. But you should definitely be able to get the first few because that will give you your analysis marks. That's all I'm going to ask for this study theme. The next bit that you'll have later this week, and I'll get the video up later on today or on Tuesday for you, depending when you're watching this, will be on voting systems. And that will be a different study theme we'll be doing. So I will see you very soon.